All right, today we're diving into a landmark Indian Supreme Court case that didn't just end one marriage. It actually changed the very definition of cruelty in the eyes of the law. This is the incredible story of case Srinivas versus case Sunita.
And really, the whole thing hinges on this one massive question. Can just a single, false criminal complaint be so hurtful, so damaging, that it's enough to legally end a marriage? Let's get into it.
So, let's start at the very beginning. We're talking about a couple, case Srinivas and case Sunita. They got married back in 1989, but by the mid-90s, the relationship had pretty much fallen apart. And that, right there, set the stage for a legal fight that would, believe it or not, change everything.
So the timeline starts out simply enough. They marry in '89, they have a son in '91, but by 1995 things had clearly gone south. The wife, case Sunita, leaves the family home in June. A month later, her husband, case Srinivas, files for divorce, saying he's been treated with cruelty. Now you'd think, okay, sad story, but maybe that's where it ends. Nope, this was just the beginning.
Because right after he filed for that divorce, his wife took a step that didn't just ramp up the legal fight. It exploded into a criminal case that honestly would change their lives forever.
And just look at how serious these charges were. I mean, this wasn't some small disagreement. The wife filed a criminal complaint against her husband and 7 of his family members. We're talking attempts to murder, dowry harassment, extortion, criminal intimidation. Especially in India, where laws against dowry harassment are so vital, throwing around accusations like that carries huge weight.
And the fallout from this? It was immediate and frankly devastating. Just based on her complaint, the husband and 7 members of his family were arrested and thrown in jail. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. This was a full-blown criminal case, and people's freedom was hanging in the balance.
So what came next was this legal tug-of-war that went on for almost 10 years, bouncing between different courts that, get this, came to completely opposite decisions.
Okay, so this is where it gets really messy. You've got the criminal court, which looks at the evidence and says, nope, they're innocent, and acquits them. The family court agrees and grants the divorce. But then the case goes up to the high court, and they just flip the whole thing on its head. They completely reverse the decision and side with the wife. You're left with this legal whiplash, a total contradiction.
So that leaves this massive legal question mark, right? The lower courts are totally split. Who's actually right here? Well, there was only one place left to sort this mess out: the Supreme Court of India.
So when this case finally lands at the Supreme Court, the justices, they basically decide to cut through all the chaos. They zeroed in on one single critical question. Was her criminal complaint, the one that ended in an acquittal, remember, was that an act of mental cruelty?
Okay, so here's the key thing we need to wrap our heads around. What does the law even mean by cruelty? And it's not just about physical stuff. The law defines it as any behavior that's so bad it makes one spouse genuinely fear that it's harmful, physically or mentally, to keep living with the other person. And that idea, mental cruelty, became the absolute core of this entire case.
Now, the real turning point, the smoking gun that pretty much decided the whole thing, it wasn't some brilliant legal trick. No, it came directly from the wife herself, right there on the witness stand.
And this is what the Supreme Court seized on. You see, they discovered that the wife admitted, under oath, that she never even mentioned the most serious stuff, like the attempted murder charge, in her very first statement to the police. For the court, that was a huge red flag. It proved the whole thing wasn't genuine. It was, as they put it, a contrived afterthought, something she came up with after he filed for divorce, likely as a way to get back at him.
And once they had that admission, the court just systematically took apart all of her arguments. So she says, hey, just because they were acquitted doesn't mean my complaint was false. The court's answer? Your own testimony proves it was. Then she argues, it was only one complaint, and this is where the court drops a bombshell. Even one is enough. Basically, every single defense she put up, the court knocked it down.
So what's the big takeaway number here? It's 1. The Supreme Court made it crystal clear. Just one false criminal complaint can be enough to legally qualify as matrimonial cruelty. That's it. Just one. This simple, powerful idea defined the entire outcome.
So finally, on November 19, 2014, after this incredibly long and twisted legal journey, the Supreme Court laid down its final word. They sided with the husband, case Srinivas, and dissolved the marriage once and for all on the grounds of mental cruelty.
But the story doesn't end there. This case wasn't just about one family's drama. No,
This decision sent ripples through the entire legal system, creating a landmark shift that we're still feeling today.
So let's break down why this case is such a big deal. First, it set a super clear precedent. Filing a false criminal complaint is mental cruelty, period. Second, it officially recognized that you can use the law itself as a weapon, and that is a form of abuse. Third, and this is so important, this isn't a one-way street. The principle is totally gender neutral. It applies no matter which spouse makes the false accusation. And finally, because it's a Supreme Court judgment, it's now the law of the land. Every lower court in India has to follow it.
And believe me, the impact of this case is not some dusty old history. Just in 2023, the Delhi High Court was quoting this exact case, calling false criminal complaints the ultimate form of cruelty. So yeah, this precedent is very much alive and kicking.
And all of this really leaves us with a big, complex question to chew on. On one hand, the court created this crucial shield against people who would use the law as a weapon, but it also shines a light on a really delicate balancing act. As the law keeps evolving, how do we strike that perfect balance? How do we protect genuine victims of abuse while also protecting innocent people from accusations that can completely destroy their lives? That's the tough question this landmark case leaves us with.